Sequel number 31. Welcome. The Church of Uganda at 150 years, a celebration. Produced by Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi. We are moving on. We are now in 1894. And so the sequel begins. In June 1894, Buganda Kingdom was declared a British Protectorate to the delight of Bishop Alfred Tucker and Apollo Kagwa. On the 27th of August 1894, Colonel Calville went to the Great Lukiko and presented the Protectorate Treaty with the Union Jack flag and presented them as the instruments of becoming a British Protectorate. The London Gazette, published on the 19th of June 1894, had confirmed the same much earlier, of course, and that was the legal date. The Kochi chiefdom had officially become an annexure of Buganda in 1894, seceding from Bunyoro Kingdom. So was Bugerere County, thanks to the effort of the military soldier and commander Semei Kakunguru. The native Uganda rifles became, therefore, automatically, those soldiers automatically became under the British government, or they became part of the British government. And on the 30th of August 1894, a Scottish man who grew up in Australia, his name was George Wilson Tayari, was appointed permanent assistant commissioner in the British service in charge of Uganda. Commissioners were to be the ones in charge, but they didn't stay for long, most of them. But now this one was to become a permanent assistant commissioner. And therefore, I want to take some time to introduce this gentleman to us, to you. George Wilson was born in Scotland but grew up in Australia from the age of 5 and was educated there up to when he became around 27. His native country, these are the Scottish people, had the Scottish Missionary Society. They gave him a job in their missions in Kenya. But in 1890, he left them to join the Imperial British East African Company at Mombasa. So when Captain Frederick Rugged was told to rush to Buganda in 1889 because of Carl Peters, it was him he left in charge at the Dagoretti Fort. Now this was towards Fort Smith in what we call Nairobi today. The Imperial British Company became bankrupt in 1890. And George Wilson Tayari could not be paid salary anymore, so he left them and he returned to the Scottish Missionary Society. There, his boss was Dr. James Stewart, who oversaw the construction of the Mwembe Tayari market in Mombasa town. Now, George Wilson loved his bottle, and you know what I mean, in his free evening time, of course. Then when he was free, he would call his porters. He would summon his porters, announcing, Tayari, the Kiswahili word meaning ready, or asking ready. Well, that he meant to be served his bottle of whiskey. When people asked who was supervising the Mwembe market construction, this is in Mombasa, the workers used to answer in a chorus that Tayari, Tayari, and from then on, his trade name changed to Bwana Tayari or Mr. Tayari. Even the Mwembe market on completion retained his nickname as the Mwembe Tayari. This market is still available today. Those who go to Mombasa, if you ever ask, you will be shown the Mwembe Tayari market. Now, he was recommended to the British government service in August 1892, and they employed him from 1893 in Mombasa. However, on the 30th of August 1894, he joined the British government Uganda service. In Uganda, he therefore became what I've told you earlier, the assistant commissioner, but a permanent one. He was not to be reshuffled. And so he served in the same position for a whooping 14 years. Therefore became the single longest serving commissioner of his time in East Africa. He was a married man with a Swahili woman and locally raised a son and a daughter. Yeah. His son was called Edward Harun Wilson. He was born in Kenya but grew up in Uganda. And after school, he worked locally as a dealer in Lere Wagon Chako. Harun married a Swahili woman like his father Tayari, while his sister married in the extended local family of the fallen Chow stocks. On arrival in 1894, George Wilson Tayari formed what was then called the Native Council. The Baganda already had the Aluchiko, but for him, he called it, he formed another Native Council. And he wanted this council to help him administer the Buganda kingdom. And that endured him to Apolokagwa, who already was used to the Lukiko system, and they became very, very good friends. He was a family man and someone who had come to stay with his entire family. Of course, they were half-caste, beautiful ladies and girls and boys. So Tayari had this easy approach. He was good at giving counsel. He was free with the Africans, becoming very close to Apolokagwa and the missionaries, of course. So that is as much as the British had decided to take over Uganda. Then a tragedy at Namirembe. In October 1894, Archdeacon Walker was in the Reed Church building at Namirembe teaching when a windstorm started blowing. Suddenly, a great cracking noise was heard as the poles of the mission church that had been rotting underground finally gave in. They let go. All the candidate class students he was teaching, Reverend Walker escaped outside as the roof was brought down and the church collapsed. So the beautiful mission church collapsed. I keep warning you, this was not a cathedral. The cathedral was still in Frere Town. On the 21st of November 1894, Buganda chiefs led by Apolokagwa and evangelists, as well as the Church Missionary Society adherents, resolved to build another mission church on top of Namirembe Hill. The construction began with a ridge pole and was to take several months. Meanwhile, Bishop Tucker had returned from England and he had reported to Frere Town, the cathedral, on the 29th of July 1894, where he found the invitation letter to university missionaries in Zanzibar. Their bishop, the late Simithes, had died, and so there was no one to confirm their candidates. Archdeacon Jones Bafeman of Zanzibar was the one in charge there. The bishop honored the invitation to Zanzibar and confirmed their candidates, although, as I told you before, they were not part of the Eastern Equatorial Diocese. Then an interesting gentleman also arrived, George Blackledge, arrived in Uganda with the first set of women missionaries, the first ever women missionaries in Uganda. Miss Faley, Miss Pilgrim, Miss Thomserf, Miss Brown, and Miss Chadwick. They were not married at that time. They were not allowed to be married if they were to become missionaries. Married missionaries came in later. But these pioneers arriving in 1894, they were all singles. The local Baganda had never seen a woman Muzungu. So these arrivals, the beauties, were the first ones. Okay, let's return to the bishop in Mombasa. On return to Frere from Zanzibar, Bishop Tucker confirmed 87 candidates at Rabai on the 20th of August, and then began a pastoral tour of northern Tanganyika from Sadani, which is next to Bagamoyo. He was told of Blackridge and Lady Missionaries who had just left for Buganda. He was very happy. Women at last. Well, not his wife. Not his wife. His wife Josephine and the son were in England, and they were not visiting anytime soon, if ever. So the bishop was able to visit Usagara, Muto Mawe, Mamboya, Mpwapwa, and the tour took him almost up to 90 days. Now, at the end of the pastoral visit, the bishop returned to the coast at Sadani, or near Bagamoyo, the former slave market. But unfortunately, he was very sick. He took quinine. You see, now malaria medicine was available. So he took quinine. He got from Sadani, but got worse. So this quinine was not working. So he was rushed to the university's mission hospital at a place called Mukunanzini in Zanzibar, where he was admitted for 3 whole weeks. Hey, my goodness. It looks like we almost lost the bishop. Anyway, he recovered and was welcomed back in Frere Town on the 7th of January 1895. Brethren, that is our sequel number 31. Tomorrow, we shall see what happened next. May the good Lord bless us all.